Hey, what's up ladies and gentlemen, wargamers and YouTubers? This is Boomer Shaka Boxer, and today we have another episode of Kraken Unleashed. This time, I'll be demonstrating the New Mexico, the Tier 6 United States Battleship. I can't say anything bad about the ships in Tier 6, because it's at this tier that the balance is arguably the best. Furthermore, all the Tier 6 ships in each respective tech tree line start to take an identity of their own. No ship feels underwhelming, no ship feels omnipotent, making this one of my favorite tiers to play. Let's take a look at a matchup. We're playing in a tier 6 match in Fault Line, 3 cap domination. With only 2 battleships and 1 carrier on each side, this is a bottom heavy game, numerically dominated by cruisers and destroyers. What this means is that there are a lot of targets possessing relatively low HP as well as high mobility. The typical engagement in this situation are quick and decisive. This is of course a direct opposite to what would be referred to as a top-heavy game, numerically dominated by battleships and carriers, where the fights are drastically longer due to high HP, armor, and low mobility targets. With that said, let's begin. Fault Line is a very deceptive map, especially for beginning battleship captains. The first time you see this map, you may think, alright, I'm a slow capital ship, and because I'm spawned near the middle, the obvious decision would then be to go to B flag. But that's precisely the flag you cannot go to, especially in the early game. The rationale behind that being, you have the worst detection in the game, followed by abysmal turret traverse and reload. Before you even get into B flag, you will be detected from multiple angles, translating into you putting yourself into a situation where you will get focus fired easily by multiple enemy groups. So instead of going to B flag, the 2 better early game options would then consist of making a lateral movement, preferably into A flag, with C flag also being an option. This way, instead of being the focus of the entire enemy team, you can partition how much risk you take. In this matchup, I opted to head westerly towards A flag. One thing to note here is that because A and C flag are furthest away from the typical battleship spawn at the middle, the early game for a battleship player on Fault Line generally consists of 1 or 2 long range saddles, and oftentimes no HP support for your teammates. In general, it's pretty common for someone to sink on this or any map actually before you can be in position to draw opposing fire and make your armor effective. Acknowledging this discrepancy in mobility, however, you'll soon realize that BB captains typically need to establish themselves not in the early game, but rather in the mid game. Once the caps have been established, it's the BB's job to either reinforce it with their large HP pool and armor, or to try to force the enemy team to relinquish their own cap. At this moment, I noticed the enemy Cleveland heading into A flag, and in a few moments, he will be coming clear of the island. This may be my only opportunity to get a shot off in the early game, so I do my best to line up a shot and fire at 17 kilometers away. As the battleship captain, one of the best things you can do is assess the situation during your long reloads. Earlier, I noticed 2 enemy DDs at B cap, the Clemson and the Farragut, and they should have spotted me as well. So in the short term, considering the available information on the minimap, they should know that I have limited local fire support, and they may attempt to pressure me. If they do push out, however, understanding the layout of the terrain, they will have to go through the gaps at E4, D5, and D6, which provides me a great opportunity to get off at least 1 clean salvo. One of the really good perks about the New Mexico is its tighter rotational speed relative to the Fuso. The 4x3 gun configuration is also worth noting, as it will enable me to put down more shots against DDs in situations like this upcoming one. I start to slow down because I don't actually want to commit to pushing out of the gap. The Clemson and the Farragut appear to have noticed the Matsuki and are heading westerly, so it's very likely that my clean shot will be through the E4 gap. So one of the more important tactical decisions I can make at the moment is to be parallel against the two enemy engaging DDs, so that as soon as I launch my salvo, I can turn my nose north, be perpendicular, and decrease my profile against their more than likely launch torpedo strike against me.
Confirmed penetration.
There's the clean salvo.
All stations reporting the position of a strategic target.
And there's the turn. I can't see the torpedoes yet, but I know they're coming for me.
Torpedoes astern. Torpedoes to port.
As I'm reloading this salvo, this is a great opportunity to assess the long-term situation. We appear to be pushing A flag, and the enemy team appears to be pushing C flag. At B flag, the two enemy DDs have taken considerable damage and will not be able to support it for too long. Remember that mid-game presence I mentioned in the beginning of the video? With both teams losing a few destroyers, which are my biggest threats, instead of continuing into A flag, which will put me too far away from any meaningful confrontation, this may be a great opportunity for me to start establishing my armor and health at B flag.
We've sunk an enemy destroyer.
And there goes the Clemson. The enemy team appears to have a considerable force still stationed at C flag, while most of our remaining team is at A flag. We have to force an engagement at B flag while their units are still spread apart. And so I finally make that commitment to cross the gap and sail into B flag. We're down in almost every meaningful category, be it points, caps, and ships. But one thing I like about the current situation, aside from the enemy team being spread apart, is that they still have a sizable amount of cruisers. As a battleship captain, that's always a favorable matchup I'll entertain.
Target penetrated.
I put in an okay salvo against the New Mexico that wasn't paying attention, but my intention here is to actually seal the distance against the Aoba south of me. The best situation for me would be for him to open up his broadside too early in an attempt to torpedo strike me, enabling me favorable access into his citadels.
Ship is on fire. Main
turret critically damaged.
With islands sealing both his allies and my allies, the Congo and I enter into a seemingly rare one-on-one situation in the middle of the map, which I will happily try to take advantage of until both our support groups can get line of sight.
Roger. Proceeding to assist you.
I noticed the Omaha entering through the D6 gap, but under 10 kilometers and closing, that may not have been his best possible decision. I hold my next salvo and wait for the Omaha, another favorable matchup I need to exploit in order to start catching up in our score.
The ship is on fire.
Enemy cruiser foundered.
Torpedoes to port.
Fire support.
Originally, I was going to salvo against the other enemy Aoba, but noticed last second an enemy Minikaze. Finally, the last enemy DD shows up, and the longer he lives, the harder the rest of this battle will be. We need to pressure him, and that includes me.
Enemy heavily damaged.
Attention. Reporting the target position.
Our carrier, the Ryujo, is doing a mighty fine job of keeping us protected from enemy air groups, as well as spotting imminent threats at B flag. Because the fighters are effectively spotting the Minikaze, I'm trying to get a read as to whether he'll be bold enough to actually come out of the island. He does, and not a moment later, I salvo.
Enemy
New
destroyer
Mexico,
sunk.
Kraken unleashed.
Torpedoes to port.
But we're not out of the woods just yet, and there's still a lot of fighting to be had. With the enemy Minikaze out of the fight, we can finally cap B flag and turn this game around. It took a massive effort on everyone's part, but the momentum appears to finally be shifting to our side. Seeing how the enemy air groups have finished their strike, I decided to immediately repair my fire.
Our victory is in sight.
Battle ends in 5 minutes.
And based on the current flight path of the returning squadrons, it's feasible that the enemy carrier is currently positioned at C flag. Attempting to spot the enemy carrier will ultimately be an extremely hard task, considering all the islands we have to clear before getting line of sight. Doing a bit of calculations, it's at this moment I actually start to worry a little bit. As well as we played to come back from the dead, our carrier appears to have been disconnected because his air groups are just sitting in the air. And the Cleveland and I do not actually have the hit points left to defend against a reasonable strike from the enemy Ryujo. With a good 4 minutes left, that's 2 potential sorties that we will have to be ready for.
I'm on it.
Here comes the first strike group, and not having enough hit points left, our Cleveland gets sunk immediately. Realizing my predicament, and knowing full well that I will not do any better than the Cleveland did, I opt to sail west, and let our hard-fought caps do their job. By sailing west, I hope to increase the distance between me and the enemy Ryujo, forcing him to have to cover more distance when he finally attempts to strike me. And fortunately for me and my team, my preemptive decision making enables me to luckily evade his first strike. Luck is the moment when preparation meets opportunity. I was too busy chit-chatting here and actually clipped the island. Fortunately, however, I made enough good decisions throughout the duration of the match, and this game ends before the enemy CV can strike me. Good game. A hard-earned victory in the Tier 6 New Mexico. Let me know what you guys thought, and if you enjoyed this kind of content, leave a like, comment, or subscribe. Until next time, this is Boom Shaka Boxer, signing out.